Why do I keep dreaming of drowning in calm water? Why did my childhood home appear again, but it was burning? Why do I keep meeting the same stranger in different forms? These aren't just dreams. They are letters, not sent from the stars, but from the buried corridors of your own psyche. They arrive at night, disguised in riddles and strangeness, hoping you'll pause long enough to listen. Dreams are the guiding words of the soul. Carl Jung. In our waking hours, we speak in logic. We demand clarity, order, reason. But dreams do not obey those rules. They are a language unto themselves, the native tongue of the unconscious. And like any language we've forgotten, it can feel frustratingly cryptic until we learn to read between the lines. A dream doesn't announce you're overwhelmed. Instead, it shows you caught in a tidal wave. It doesn't say you haven't healed from your past. It places you back in that same house, but this time, the walls are burning. The subconscious speaks through symbols, archetypes, repetition, and distortion. Its goal isn't to confuse you, it's to awaken you. Each dream, no matter how bizarre, carries meaning. Sometimes it reveals a repressed memory. Sometimes it warns of an emotion you've ignored too long. Sometimes it presents a version of the self you're becoming or resisting. But it always points to something real, something alive, deep beneath the noise of your conscious thoughts. Dreams are not random static. They are messages in a language you once knew before the world taught you to forget. Tonight, when you dream again, don't just observe, receive. A letter has arrived from the part of you that remembers everything. Beneath the bright, organized realm of our waking thoughts lies a vast, shadowed terrain, a territory Freud called the subconscious, and Jung later expanded into the collective unconscious. If the conscious mind is the face we show the world, then the subconscious is the voice we often don't hear but that speaks through us anyway. In habits, symbols, slips of the tongue, and especially in dreams. Freud envisioned the subconscious as a storehouse of repressed desires and unresolved conflicts. It was the place where unacceptable urges, especially those tied to sexuality, aggression, and childhood experience, were buried, only to return in distorted forms. To Freud, dreams were a kind of nighttime compromise, a disguised fulfillment of a forbidden wish. The subconscious, in this view, was not malevolent, but it was powerful, and always pushing upward toward consciousness, seeking expression through dream work and symbolism. Jung took Freud's idea further. He believed that beyond the personal subconscious lies a deeper layer shared by all humanity, the collective unconscious. This is the place of archetypes, ancient, universal symbols that appear across cultures and eras. The hero, the mother, the trickster, the serpent. These motifs arise not because of coincidence, but because we are all wired with psychic blueprints that shape the way we dream, fear, and long. For Jung, dreams were not merely wish fulfillment. They were revelations, attempts by the psyche to restore balance, to speak truth, to guide. But here's what both thinkers agreed on. The subconscious doesn't write in language. It doesn't send messages in neatly typed sentences or rational bullet points. It writes in images, metaphors, and paradoxes. It tells you you're drowning when in fact you're being swallowed by a relationship. It shows you a mirror that doesn't reflect your face, when in truth you no longer recognize who you are. It leads you through a hallway with no doors because you've convinced yourself there's no way out of the life you're living. This cryptic authorship is not accidental. The subconscious speaks in this way because the rational mind is too quick to dismiss, to defend, to deny. Symbols slip past our mental gatekeepers. They go where plain truth cannot. Inside each dream, there is a character moving through this symbolic world. This is the dream ego. The dream ego is not quite you, but it stands in for you. It's the one getting chased or flying or falling. It's the one staring at the burning house or finding a child in the attic. How this figure reacts matters. Does it run, freeze, surrender, fight? The dream ego's behavior often reflects your current capacity or incapacity to face the emotions the subconscious is surfacing. Then there's the matter of repression, the fuel of the subconscious engine. Every time we suppress grief, guilt, anger, longing, anything we've been taught is too much or not allowed, it doesn't vanish. It retreats, and it waits. These buried feelings become what Jung called the shadow, the denied self, the parts of us we pretend don't exist. But the shadow isn't content to stay hidden. it leaks into our lives and into our dreams, where it stages elaborate plays using symbols instead of actors. Dreams are one of the safest places the psyche has to explore these forbidden territories. A dream can introduce you to a violent stranger who turns out to be you. It can show you harming someone you love, not because you want to, but because some unacknowledged resentment lives in the basement of your soul. These are not literal truths, they are psychological truths, meant to be engaged, not feared. And then there are the complexes, psychological knots formed around old wounds, usually from early relationships. Freud called them the residue of infantile conflict. Jung saw them as autonomous subpersonalities that behave like mini-psyches within us, with their own agendas and voices. They too surface in dreams. The overbearing father, the unreachable mother, the seductive betrayer. These aren't just characters, they are symbols drawn from your emotional history, now reassembled into dream scripts that aim to liberate you through awareness. The subconscious is not just a place, it is an author. And though its grammar may be strange, its intent is urgent. The dream is not meaningless, it is a manuscript written by a part of you that remembers what you've forgotten, reveals what you've ignored, and desires what your waking self might not yet understand. So the next time you wake from a dream, don't dismiss it. Read it as you would a novel from a brilliant but eccentric writer, one who knows you better than you know yourself, one who isn't trying to confuse you, but to crack you open. Because somewhere in those symbols is the sentence your soul has been aching to say. Dreams may seem chaotic at first glance, bizarre shifting scenes stitched together by illogical leaps and surreal images. But underneath that strangeness lies a profound structure, a grammar of the unconscious, shaped not by rules of syntax, but by symbolic resonance, emotional urgency, and archetypal meaning. Carl Jung believed that deep within every human psyche lies a shared pool of imagery and motifs, the collective unconscious. This is where archetypes dwell. The primordial characters, situations, and settings that have recurred across mythologies, religions, and stories for centuries. They are not inherited ideas, but inherited potentials for symbolic thought and emotional patterning. James Hillman, expanding Jung's work, emphasized that these archetypes are not fixed roles, but psychic presences, living metaphors that animate the soul and shape our interior experience. In dreams, these archetypes emerge with raw clarity. The mother might appear as a nurturing figure or as a devouring presence. The trickster could be a shape-shifting stranger, a child who breaks all rules, or a coyote speaking in riddles. The tower often signals isolation, ambition, or psychological distance. The ocean is rarely just water. It is the symbol of the unconscious itself, vast, powerful, beautiful, and dangerous. These symbols speak in dream grammar, and dream grammar is not like waking logic. Dreams compress time, allowing you to relive your entire childhood in the span of a few seconds. They reverse cause and effect. You cry, and then discover why. They exaggerate symbols to get your attention. A tooth doesn't just fall out, your entire jaw might crumble. A hallway isn't merely long, it becomes infinite. The dream world is not designed to make sense. It is designed to reveal what the waking mind refuses to confront. And like myths and fairy tales, dreams operate through metaphor and transformation. In a fairy tale, a girl doesn't feel abandoned, she's left in the woods. In a myth, a man doesn't lose control, he's turned into a beast. In dreams, when you feel powerless, you may find yourself falling endlessly, because the body knows before the intellect does. When you're clinging to a secret or an emotional wall, you may dream of locked rooms or forgotten doors, representations of memories you've sealed away. When you're experiencing a loss of personal agency or vitality, you may dream of losing your teeth, a common symbol for powerlessness, aging, or fear of change. This symbolic language doesn't lie. It intensifies. It doesn't say, "This is what's happening," it cries, "This is how it feels." Your dream of being chased through an abandoned city may not relate to a literal fear, but to a psychological state. Perhaps you're running from a truth too overwhelming to face. Maybe the city is your own mind, deserted in places you no longer visit, and the pursuer is an unclaimed part of yourself. These archetypes and dream structures aren't random. They are functional. They exist to orient the ego toward deeper understanding, even if they must confuse it first. They create conflict, not for chaos, but for transformation. Like the mythic hero's journey, dreams often begin in the ordinary world, thrust you into a strange one, confront you with symbolic trials, and offer a treasure of insight if you return awake enough to claim it. Dreams are the modern myths of the personal soul. They carry within them the same dramatic architecture, the same emotional truths, the same sacred symbols that ancient people wove into their legends. But in the dreamscape, you are the protagonist. You are the tower and the ocean, the trickster and the one being tricked. The story is yours, but the language is ancient. And so, if we wish to understand our dreams, we must relearn this language, not by translating it into daylight logic, but by listening to it as we would a poem, a myth, a mystery. Because the grammar of dreams is not meant to explain the soul, it is meant to awaken it. Some dreams don't fade with the morning. They return, night after night, year after year, carrying the same images, emotions, and symbols as if stuck in an eternal loop. These are recurring dreams, and they are not accidents. They are emotional echoes, reverberations from the psyche that refuse to be silenced until they are seen, felt, and understood. Why does the mind repeat? In psychology, repetition is a sign of unfinished business. Carl Jung saw repeated dream motifs as content the ego has failed to integrate, unassimilated material from the unconscious that returns with increasing urgency. Freud, too, noted the compulsion to repeat as a way the psyche reenacts unresolved conflict, especially from early childhood. And trauma theory, particularly the work of Bessel van der Kolk, suggests that trauma lives not just in memory, but in the body and nervous system. When an event overwhelms us emotionally and cannot be processed, it is stored outside of narrative time. In dreams, it reemerges as sensation, symbol, and scene, frozen until it can be metabolized. Recurring dreams are the subconscious mind's way of insisting, you have not yet listened. Consider this recurring dream, shared by many. A woman finds herself in a house she's never seen before, walking down a long hallway. There are doors on either side. Most are locked. One creaks open slightly, but as she approaches, she's gripped by fear and turns away. She wakes before entering. On the surface, it's simple, a hallway, doors, a locked room. But viewed symbolically, this is a confrontation with repressed memory or unacknowledged emotion. The house may represent the self or the psyche, multi-roomed complex filled with hidden aspects. The locked doors suggest defended trauma, shame, or truths too painful to access. The slightly open door and her fear indicate that part of her is ready to look, but another part still resists. Why does she keep dreaming this? Because the emotional truth behind the dream remains unfelt. She may have endured an emotionally abusive childhood or a silenced experience of grief. But if that pain was never allowed a voice, if it was buried under coping mechanisms or social expectations, then it doesn't just disappear. It waits, it watches, and it returns, cloaked in metaphor, asking to be let in. From a neurobiological lens, as van der Kolk explains, traumatic memories are stored in sensory fragments and emotional cues, not in coherent stories. The mind cannot fully think the trauma until the body first feels it. Recurring dreams often repeat the emotional texture, fear, helplessness, guilt, even if the story changes. This is not dysfunction. It is the mind's attempt at integration. In psychoanalytic terms, the dream represents a return of the repressed. But unlike repressed desires, recurring dreams are usually not asking for fulfillment. They're asking for acknowledgement. They are grief knocking at the door, rage unspoken, shame still wearing a mask. Until the emotion beneath the symbol is recognized, the dream will continue its haunting chorus. So what can be done? Begin by engaging the recurring dream as a conversation. Write it down, speak it aloud, draw its images. Ask what each symbol could mean emotionally, not logically. What part of you is that hallway? What memory lies behind that locked door? Therapy, especially trauma-informed approaches, can help connect the emotional echo to its historical origin, turning the dream from an endless loop into a resolved chapter. Recurring dreams are not curses. They are messages from your soul's wounded parts, faithfully returning to say, "You left me behind." And once you stop running, once you open the door, the dream often vanishes. Not because it is lost, but because it has finally been heard. We often think of dreams as relics of the past, memories reshuffled, old wounds resurfaced, emotions unresolved. But dreams also look forward, not in the mystical sense of fortune-telling, but in a more intimate and psychological way. Dreams anticipate, they scan patterns, emotional undercurrents, and unacknowledged truths, then present them in symbolic form, often long before our conscious mind catches on. Carl Jung called this the oracular function of dreams. He believed the psyche, through its unconscious intelligence, could sense where we're heading, psychologically, emotionally, even spiritually, and send signals of warning or possibility. These aren't prophecies, they're pattern recognitions. Just as the body gives subtle signs before illness, the psyche speaks through dreams when we're on a path that leads either toward integration or disintegration. One woman, for instance, kept dreaming of crossing a fragile bridge over a dark ravine. Each night, the bridge deteriorated further until, in one dream, it collapsed. Weeks later, she left a high-paying job that had drained her for years. She didn't know why she quit, only that something inside had broken. Later in therapy, she came to see the bridge as her last link to emotional stability in a life that was no longer sustainable. Her dream had told the truth, quietly, symbolically, before she could admit it to herself. Another man dreamt repeatedly of boarding a train that always departed before he could get on. In waking life, he was stuck in a toxic relationship, paralyzed by fear and guilt. When he finally ended it, he dreamt of sitting peacefully on the train, watching the landscape shift. In that moment, the dream stopped being a warning and became a recognition of change, a sign that some deeper part of him had begun to move on. Dreams often present not just problems, but possibilities. They may show us who we are becoming, or who we could become, if we allow it. Jung referred to this as contact with the self, the deeper, more whole version of the individual that lies beneath ego identity. In dreams, the self might appear as a wise figure, a glowing animal, or a version of you that feels strangely unfamiliar but powerfully right. These images are not illusions. They are psychological beacons, helping guide us toward the person we are meant to grow into. To unlock these insights, we must treat dreams as messages, not noise. This is where practices like dream journaling and active imagination become essential. Dream journaling, done consistently, begins to reveal emotional patterns, repeating symbols, and the evolution of dream narratives. Over time, you may notice certain themes receding or intensifying, depending on where you are in life. Even chaotic dreams, when tracked over weeks or months, form a kind of inner autobiography, one written in metaphor and emotion instead of words. Active imagination, a Jungian method, takes this further. Instead of interpreting the dream from a distance, you enter it. You revisit the dream image in a meditative state and allow it to evolve, conversing with the dream figure, entering the locked room, following the disappearing train. This isn't fantasy. It's a dialogue with the unconscious, allowing the psyche to speak more clearly and directly than it can in symbolic form alone. Dreams do not always make sense in the moment. They often seem absurd, fragmented, or irrelevant. But over time, they reveal themselves as psychic weather forecasts, predicting storms long before they break, or pointing to light just beginning to dawn. To dream is to open a portal into possibility. Every dream you remember is an invitation to listen deeper, to feel more honestly, and to make choices aligned with your inner truth. In this way, dreams heal, not by solving problems, but by revealing the path forward, one symbol, one whisper at a time. Once, long ago, we revered dreams. Ancient cultures saw them as sacred messages. Oracles slept in temples waiting for them. Prophets, poets, and sages carried their meanings into waking life with reverence. But in the modern world, we've lost this quiet literacy. We have grown so fluent in facts, in metrics, in external data, that we've forgotten how to read the internal code of our own soul. Dreams now are often reduced to punchlines, random mental noise, or curiosities for pop psychology. But in truth, dreams are still what they've always been, letters from the self to the self. The only difference is that we've stopped checking the mailbox, and yet the letters keep arriving. Every night, your unconscious sends you messages. Not always clear, not always kind, but always real. They arrive in strange costumes, in broken clocks, in old houses, and unfamiliar faces. They come with trembling hands, hoping you'll look past the oddness and see the truth beneath the image. Not the literal truth, but the emotional one, the psychic temperature of your life, the wounds that ache for air. the potential that lies dormant, waiting for you to awaken. To begin reading these letters again, you don't need expertise. You need attention. You need tenderness. And you need a little courage. Start by writing your dreams down. Keep a notebook by your bed. Record even fragments, single images, or feelings. Do this with sincerity, not to decode, but to remember. The act of writing invites the dream to stay a little longer, to offer its shape more fully. Over time, patterns will emerge, certain themes, recurring settings, emotional tones. These are your symbols, your alphabet. You can also try drawing your dreams. Not for beauty, but for embodiment. Let your hand translate what your words cannot. A hallway, a shadowed figure, a glowing object. These images live outside language, and drawing helps you meet them where they are. Another path is speaking your dream aloud, especially in the morning or with someone you trust. There's power in giving voice to the dream. Often what sounds strange in the mind becomes eerily resonant when spoken, as if your own ears are hearing the truth you didn't know you knew. Eventually, you may want to practice active imagination, a process of re-entering the dream in a meditative state. Speak to the figures you meet. Ask them who they are. Follow the story further. Don't impose logic. Let the dream lead. This is how you build a relationship with the deeper self, not by controlling, but by listening. Reading your dreams is not about mastering a technique. It's about restoring a relationship with the part of you that feels without permission, remembers without timeline, and knows without proof. The part that watches quietly as your life unfolds and tries, night after night, to offer its counsel. And no matter how long it's been, no matter how many dreams you've ignored, it's never too late to listen again. You might be surprised. That locked room might open, that stranger might speak, that ocean might calm. Because the unconscious doesn't punish us for forgetting. It waits, it whispers, it returns again and again, hoping that one day we'll stop scrolling, stop running, stop rationalizing, and sit down with the letter it left us. Tonight, when you dream, consider it your soul's quiet knock at the door. Will you answer?